Hey y'all, and welcome to a special edition of Politbrawl. My name is Brian, and Tucker Carlson calls out this champagne socialist and exposes her for the charlatan she really is.
You're asking other people to give their money to the government. Why aren't you giving 70% of your income to the government? You could.
Well, I'm not on the top 1%, but I have no issue.
You don't need to be.
Well, that's the argument I'm making, right? That it's not about working class Americans or people like me who are upper income Americans. It's about really the wealthiest top 1%. Now,
but sure,
I have no issue.
Wait, you're a college
professor.
I'm not attacking you, by the way, at all.
I pay about 30%.
But
I know you're not.
Why not pay 70%? I don't understand. Like, what's holding you back? Why not lead by example?
Tucker, you know what's holding me back? If I knew how to do that, I would have no issue doing that. But the tax code is incredibly convoluted.
No, it's totally no. Trust me. Let me simplify it for you. Just write a check, pay your taxes, then figure out what you pay 30%. You said. Just figure out what another 40% of your income would be. Just send it to the U.S. Treasury. Washington D.C. No zip code required.
You know what I do, Tucker? You know what I do instead of that? Because we don't have a fair system of taxation, I write checks to nonprofits that are providing services that the government should be providing.
Okay, but then
I write checks to Planned Parenthood. I write checks to nonprofits that provide a safety net for Americans.
Making an argument
so it has the same effect.
I think you may be, but it doesn't actually. So why not pass a law requiring people to send money to charities that are more effective than the government is? I mean, so you're basically conceding.
That would be great too, as long as the 1%
is not the most efficient way to lift up the poor. Then why won't you send it to the government then?
Tucker, I would say this train wreck of a Trump government is certainly not the best way to serve the poor since they have no interest in serving the poor. But in general, I think government does a fine job providing the services
I'm just asking you to practice what you preach. Let me just ask you one other question here.
I do practice what I preach.
Well, you don't. You're telling other people to send their money to the government, and you're not. So, like,
I'm telling the top 1%. No, Tucker, don't put words in my mouth. I am telling the top 1%. I am saying the government needs to tax them fairly. If we're going to talk about taxation, I actually think I'm taxed pretty fairly. I choose to spend way more than the majority of my income on other people. I choose to do that. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about.
Of course, we're not talking about you. You don't want to do it.
We're talking about the top 1%.
It sounds awful.
Tucker, no, you don't get to do this. You don't get to lie. You don't get Tucker. You don't get to put words in my mouth. We're talking about the top 1%.
Professor.
You're noting the obvious. I'm not on the top 1%. It's not about me. This is not an argument about me.
But not you. Oh, it's not
yes,
okay, I get it.
yes,
it's never
yes.
About,
that's the argument.
People proposing it. Let me ask you one quick question, though. I understand.
It's the marginal tax rate on the top wealthiest
There's
Americans.
a real
That's what
concern,
we're talking
I think, about accumulation of wealth at the top. It's probably not good for society. I bet we agree on that.
It's not.
But it's not about income. It's not about your income taxes. It's about capital gains taxes, taxes on investment, on capital that is working. That's how people get rich. Nobody's making $1 billion from the salary. Are you suggesting raising the capital gains tax rate to 70% too?
I am suggesting raising the capital gains tax on the wealthiest 1%. I am suggesting raising the income tax.
To what?
You know, economists say somewhere around 50% would be good. Income tax, you can go as high as 83%, and it won't suppress wealth pursuit.
But why would you want to tax labor more than capital? Why are you giving a pass to rich investors? I don't understand. Just why are you taxing working people?
The wealthiest 1%. I would like to tax them at higher rates across the board on their salary, on their investments, and also on what they're passing to the future generations. I want to see the death tax go up. I want to see all of it go up because right now the top 1% do not pay their fair share.
It is amazing to me that Tucker is able to get these people on his program. How does he do it when they know they are going to get absolutely smacked around? This woman could not hold her own, couldn't make a real logical point, and couldn't really stick to it and didn't understand any of the criticism. Ultimately, I'd have to say, bless your heart, but you know what? We need to dive into this a little bit deeper, and that's why we have CEO of Colonial Metals Group, Paul Stone, here to kind of explain this mental insanity. Mr. Stone, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Great to be back. Great. Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with this premise. She's mad that the 1% have 50% of the wealth, right? Don't they pay the majority of our taxes? Does this woman not understand how the system actually works? I mean, do they? Do they actually understand what's going on?
No, I mean, come on, do they? They don't. They're just stabbing into the darkness and lurching for something that might work. But I think what they're just really working at is the adolescent approach to their their constituency to say, well, they're the bad guys. They're the bad guys. This country is kind of built on cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, the Soviets versus the Americans. We've made a lot of hay out of opposing ideas, right? So now this idea is, oh, well, the rich people are keeping you from having your money. And I did a couple of quick calculations. I don't know how accurate all is, but it's at least somewhere on a map that perhaps the top 1%, which is 0.2% of the population of this country, it is extreme, is holding around $36 trillion in wealth. So let's say they made 10% on that money every year, and she wants to tax 70% of that. That would give the government $2.6 trillion. But let me just ask you, Brian, you woke up tomorrow morning, you're suddenly worth $500 million. Someone comes to you with an idea to buy this beat up strip mall, and you could put all these new restaurants and stores and banks in it, and it would cost you a whole bunch of money. Are you going to spend your own money and risk that could be gone? Let's say it costs you $250 million to do this project. Wouldn't you rather borrow the money?
Absolutely.
So if there's a giant tax that's going to say, hey, Brian, after a few years, your little strip mall project's going to be alive and profitable, you're going to have to pay 70% of those profits to the government. Now you're like, I got 500 million, man. I don't need to risk any of it. I'm going to go buy a boat. See you later. Ciao. And you're not going to turn that capital back into the economy to create economic activity. Now those workers aren't coming to redo the strip mall, right? So the silliness of it is, if you punish those who do create the economic activity at the top, then you harm small businesses that feed off those construction projects, for an example, right? The dry cleaners, the Ace Hardware, right? The Home Depot, big business, but small business, dry cleaners, gasoline stations, the grocery stores, all that stuff feeds off that construction project happening. Mm-hmm. But now it isn't going to happen because you've punished the hell out of the wealthy. So that's where it's maniacal. You just would shudder a huge, rev gen portion to our economy when you say to the wealthy, we're going to take 70% of your money if you risk it. And they're just like, yeah, then we won't risk it. Got enough.
It's just insane. And it also goes to show that almost the reverse of what you think would logically happen is true. The tax cuts end up working. The Bush tax cuts work. It's why even Obama kept it. The Trump tax cuts worked. And that's why Joe Biden and the Democrats have not done a thing to stop it. And you'd think that that a side that has gone so far to the left would advocate time and time again, but even Democrat politicians, apparently not the sassy little socialists, even Democrat politicians know that the right-wing ideas for economics end up working. So I think this is going to be my last main question here. Why is it that the Democrats, and I believe rich white liberals, maybe I should leave with that, why do they go so hard for the socialist policies? Is this just a way to virtue signal and show to your community that we're doing the right thing? Is that what's really going on here? Because that's what it looks like to me.
There's numerous reasons for that. We're starting to verge into the psychology of someone's thoughts, and maybe they've just done so extraordinarily well, they feel a little guilty about how well they've done. It doesn't make sense, right, to create something that is so successful that you would ever feel bad about it when the challenges to get to that mountain peak there were so many to overcome, that's something that someone, man or woman, should take pride in. And obviously it was a team effort to get there. When you look at like Huizinga, he's the only person who ever created 3 Fortune 500 companies, Blockbuster, Wealth Management, and AutoNation. I mean, is he a bad person? He created a lot of jobs. If you ever said, hey, great job with Blockbuster, we're going to take 70% of your money now that you're doing wealth management. Not waste management. Maybe he never starts it, right? And you just think about all these jobs that wouldn't happen if people weren't incentivized. Here's a better approach. What if she went to the top 1% in each state and said, hey, this state needs X. Do you have any projects coming up? Could we kind of give you an incentive here, and then you go ahead and fund this charity or these charities in this state that would really help the state? Why can't they get with the people? It's idiotic. Like they want to outlaw be able to sue the gun manufacturers for some idiot shooting up a restaurant. Then why don't we sue the automakers for the DWI accidents? It's just crazy. It's just crazy. They just have the wrong approach. Obviously, they want a great outcome. Bill Clinton said, hey, we should help people own homes that don't have perfect credit. So he allowed the banks to lend 10 times the amount of money they're sitting on. Great. 2008. Now you have a wildly inflated real estate market. If you could fog a mirror, you could get a bank loan, and you're in some $750,000 house you can't afford, but you owned it because you're on a 5-year arm. There's a lot of great ideas in the government. There's just horrific execution.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, sir. Well, thank you for explaining why Tucker just had to absolutely wreck this socialist. Ultimately, I just had to say one thing to her. Bless her heart. Y'all, this is Brian here on Politibro. Thank you to Mr. Stone for coming in from Colonial Metals Group. Catch you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until then, y'all have a good one.